You picked up your phone 43 times today. You didn't decide to. You didn't even notice most of them. One moment, your hand was empty, and the next, a small glass rectangle was glowing in your palm. Nothing happened. No message came in. No notification pulled you there. Your brain simply asked, and your hand obeyed. That should scare you a little, because the real story of why you did that isn't about phones at all. It's about a lever, a pigeon, and a discovery from the 1950s that quietly rewired the century that followed. In 1957, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner was running experiments at Harvard with pigeons and a small metal lever. Peck the lever, get a food pellet. Simple enough. But Skinner noticed something strange when he changed the reward schedule. When food arrived every single time the pigeon pecked calmly, predictably, and stopped once it was full. But when the reward came randomly, sometimes after one peck, sometimes after 20, sometimes not at all, the pigeon didn't stop. It pecked harder, faster, almost frantically. Skinner called this a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and he found it produced the most compulsive, most resistant to extinction behavior he could create in a laboratory. Not certainty, uncertainty. The not knowing was the hook. Skinner ran the comparison side by side, and the results weren't close. Pigeons on a fixed schedule rewarded every single time pecked in a lazy, business-like rhythm. Pigeons on a variable schedule pecked thousands of times an hour, well past the point of hunger, well past any rational need for more food. Some kept pecking even after the food stopped coming entirely, for far longer than the pigeons who'd only ever been rewarded consistently. Uncertainty didn't just maintain the behavior. It intensified it. You already know where this is going, don't you? Every time you unlock your phone, you're pecking the lever. Sometimes there's a message, sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's a like, a comment, a headline that makes your stomach drop. You never know which one it'll be until you look. And that unpredictability isn't a design accident. It's the exact mechanism Skinner documented 70 years ago, rebuilt in glass and silicon and shipped straight to your pocket. It's the same mechanism, incidentally, that casino engineers have leaned on for decades when designing slot machines to pay out on no fixed pattern at all. You are not holding a phone. In the moments you don't even register, you are holding a slot machine that also happens to make calls. Here's where it gets stranger. For decades, scientists assumed dopamine, the brain chemical everyone blames for pleasure, was released when you received the reward. The good feeling, they thought, came after the food, after the win, after the notification landed. Then in the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz, working with primates at Cambridge, recorded something that upended that assumption. He measured dopamine neurons firing not when the reward arrived, but before it, in the moment of anticipation. Once the animal learned that a cue predicted a reward, the dopamine spike moved. It stopped firing for the treat itself and started firing for the mere possibility of the treat. The chemical everyone associated with pleasure turned out to be the chemical of anticipation, of almost. Sit with that for a second. The rush you feel isn't really from the message. It's from the second before you know whether there's a message. Your phone doesn't need to reward you to hook you. It only needs to make you wonder if it will. This is where your daily 43 unlocks start making a different kind of sense. You're not checking your phone because you expect something good. You're checking it because your brain has learned through thousands of repetitions that the checking itself is the moment the dopamine fires, win or lose. The checking has become the reward, which means the behavior can run entirely on autopilot, disconnected from any actual payoff. You could check your phone, find nothing, feel a small flicker of disappointment, and reach for it again 90 seconds later. That's not a willpower failure. That's the exact loop Skinner's pigeons were trapped in, just wearing a nicer interface and fitting in your back pocket. But knowing the mechanism is only half the story. The other half is who built the interface this way, and whether they knew exactly what they were doing. In 2021, Dr. Anna Lemke, a psychiatrist and addiction specialist at Stanford, published a book drawing on years of clinical work describing what she called a dopamine nation, A culture where nearly every product, from food to apps to shopping, has been engineered by teams who understand Skinner's schedules and Schultz's anticipation research intimately. She wasn't describing a conspiracy, she was describing an industry. Product designers at major technology companies have openly discussed building variable rewards directly into their interfaces. The unpredictable timing of likes, the slow loading refresh that makes you wait half a second longer than necessary, the endless scroll that never gives you a natural stopping point. None of it is random the way a pigeon's pellet was random. It's random by design, tuned and tested until it produces exactly the compulsive checking Skinner once measured in a lab cage decades earlier. And here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. You are not weak for falling into this. You are functioning exactly as a human brain is supposed to function when placed inside an environment engineered around a 70-year-old discovery about uncertainty and reward. Skinner didn't just describe a quirk of pigeons, he described a universal feature of how animal brains, including yours, learn to chase unpredictable outcomes. The people who built your favorite apps didn't invent a new kind of desire. They found the oldest lever in behavioral psychology and attached it to a screen you carry with you all day, every day, into your bed and your bathroom and your first waking second of the morning. Think about that first waking second for a moment. Before your feet touch the floor, before you've had a sip of water, your hand is already moving toward the nightstand. What are you hoping to find? You probably couldn't say. That's the point. The searching isn't attached to a specific hope anymore. It's attached to the reflex itself, built one unpredictable reward at a time, morning after morning, until the reaching became automatic. How many times has this happened to you? You pick up the phone for one reason, a single notification, a single question you wanted answered. 20 minutes later, you surface. And you couldn't tell anyone what you actually saw. Where did that time go? It didn't vanish. It was spent the way the pigeon spent its afternoon, pecking a lever that had already stopped producing anything worth wanting, unable to feel the stopping point because there never was one designed into the system to begin with. So what happens when you actually try to stop? This is where most people expect willpower to be the answer, and it isn't. Studies on intermittent reinforcement, building directly on Skinner's original findings, consistently show that behaviors built on variable rewards are the hardest of all behaviors to extinguish. Harder than behaviors tied to a guaranteed payoff, harder even than behaviors tied to no payoff at all. That's not a metaphor. It's the literal, repeated finding from decades of behavioral research. Unpredictable reward schedules create the most durable compulsions in the entire behavioral toolkit. Telling yourself to simply check less isn't fighting a bad habit. It's fighting one of the most robust learning mechanisms your brain owns, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the pull isn't really about the content, not really about your friends, your notifications, your newsfeed, then what would it take to actually loosen its grip? Researchers studying this loop, including Lemke's later clinical work with patients trying to reduce compulsive phone use, point to something almost anticlimactic in its simplicity. The loop weakens not when you white-knuckle your way through resisting the urge to check. It weakens when you remove the variability itself. Turn off notifications so nothing arrives unpredictably. Move the app off your home screen so opening it takes deliberate effort instead of reflex. Check email at 3 fixed times a day instead of continuously, so your brain stops treating every glance as a fresh roll of the dice. When the reward schedule becomes fixed and predictable again, like the pigeon that got food every single time it pecked, the compulsive checking calms down on its own, not because you got stronger, because the mechanism that hooked you needs unpredictability to survive, and you quietly took it away. Think about what that means for the other parts of your life running on the exact same script. The stock price you refresh every 10 minutes, hoping this time it moved in your favor. The text message you keep rereading, waiting to see if it lands the way you hoped it would. The job application inbox you check before you've even made coffee. The group chat you open mid-sentence, mid-meeting, mid-conversation with someone standing right in front of you. Every one of these is a lever, and you are in that moment the pigeon. Not because you're foolish, because your brain is doing exactly what a century of behavioral science says it will do when uncertainty and reward are placed side by side, over and over, thousands of times a day for years. Notice too how rarely the reward even needs to be good news. A stressful email, a cutting comment, an alarming headline. These pull you back just as hard as anything pleasant, sometimes harder. That's because the lever was never really about pleasure in the first place. It was about resolving uncertainty. Your brain doesn't only crave the good outcome, it craves knowing. And it will take almost any answer over none at all, which is exactly why doom scrolling feels compulsive even when every single thing you read makes you feel worse. The dopamine already fired in the reaching. What you found afterward was almost beside the point. There's something almost humbling in that. You spend so much energy judging yourself for reaching for your phone again, for losing an hour to a feed you don't even remember scrolling through, for checking a message thread that already ended hours ago. But judgment misses the actual mechanism. You weren't given a weak mind. You were given a normal mind, dropped into an environment specifically calibrated to exploit the oldest reward learning system evolution ever built. The lever in Skinner's lab wasn't cruel by accident. Neither is the one in your pocket. You didn't choose the 43 unlocks. Skinner's lever chose them for you, decades before you were even born. And an industry built on his findings simply handed you the mechanism in a shape you'd carry willingly. Charge every night and reach for the moment you woke up. But mechanisms can be seen. And once you see the lever for exactly what it is, you get to decide, maybe for the first time, whether you're still willing to peck it.